That's right.
So please take this opportunity. There is a sign-making station over here. Hand sanitizers, masks, car paint, all that other good stuff. You can come over here. We'll have some virtual and in-person speakers. We have the one and only Director Chantel Lewis is joining us today. Oh, come on, y'all can do better for the RTV Director. We have the amazing Working Families Party joining us today. We have the wonderful Colorado Attorney General Phil Rises joining us today. We have State Representative Leslie Harrod and State Representative Joe Salazar joining us today. We have some folks from our ADAPT community that'll be speaking to us virtually today. Make some noise for our ADAPT folks.
But I wish I
and I get to be your host today, so we're going to have some fun. We're going to make sure that we send a message. This is most likely the last time we're going to get to protest in the Trump presidency. So we're going to go out with a bang. We started with a bang 4 years ago, and we're going to go out with a bang today. So make sure that your cars are decked out. You got your stuff ready to go, because we got a good program for y'all today. Let's get this work. Everybody make some noise, honk your horns. We going to impeach the motherfucker today.
Here. See? Impeach now. Okay. Yep. Terrorist attack on our nation's capital.
And we are here to ensure that people understand that Donald Trump is not above the law. And give me 1 second. So, give me 1 second. I got a quick phone call, making sure our Attorney General is here and everything. Making sure all of our speakers are here. So we're going to take a quick break. But make some noise real quick while we take a quick break.
So much nicer to see you waving a flag. I've had those people waving their flags in my face.
Oh, I know.
And calling me a socialist, and they're the ones that are threatening me.
Absolutely. They're the threats to our democracy.
I know. Face your car. Face your car. Okay. Here we go.
Hi.
Hi. How are you? I'm Carol.
Nice to meet you.
What's your name?
Katie.
Nice to meet you, Katie. What do we do? What do we do? Stand up, fight back. Stand up, fight back. Okay.
All right. Intermission over. Let's do this. Let's do this, y'all. This past Wednesday, an act of terror took place on our United States Capitol by white supremacists and those supporting the current occupant in the White House. If they were able to fulfill their plans, they would have killed members of Congress, they would have hung the vice president, and many more people would have died. But today we gather here to say that our democracy is stronger than white supremacists and neo-Nazis. Today we stand here and ask for the immediate removal of President Donald John Trump from office. But let's be clear. White supremacy does not end when Donald Trump is not the president. It has been embedded in this country's fabric. That means we have to destroy whatever form of white supremacy is in our communities, whatever it may take.
That's right.
Those in the media have been reluctant to call this what it is, and that is a terrorist attack. If this was somebody that looked like me, they wouldn't have gotten even close to the Capitol. When Black Lives Matter protesters were protesting in Washington, D.C., they sent the National Guard. They held their ground. But when it was a group of white supremacists, they were able to go through multiple barricades, break through windows, and they were the ones that were running their damn mouths this summer saying, we would never do such thing. I call BS. So today, this is our opportunity to stand in solidarity with the members of Congress, those particularly DSA members like Representative Ilhan Omar, who was the first one to say, you know what, I'm going to bring the impeachment articles forward. A black woman said that. We're here to support representatives like AOC to ensure that when she goes to vote, she has the support of her community. But again, impeachment is not going to just cure what we have today. It doesn't even stop with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Just because they're Democrats does not mean that they're the holiest people in the world. We got a mayor that's a Democrat here that criminalizes the homeless. So we got to be honest that we have to hold elected leaders accountable when they want our vote and they want to represent us. So I bring you greetings from Congresswoman Diana DeGette, who says, I want to thank you for the invitation to speak this morning. I wish I could be there with you all for this important event, but I had to stay in Washington, D.C., where she is currently working with several of her colleagues to impeach President Donald Trump for a second time. And ultimately remove him from office immediately. What took place in our nation's capital this week was not a protest, it was an insurrection.
Right.
The President of the United States, standing blocks away from the U.S. Capitol, urged his supporters to lay siege on the building and try to stop us from certifying the election for his opponent. He attempted to bring down our government because he lost an election. There should be no place in our society where such violence, and none of us as Americans should be willing to tolerate this behavior from our president. President Trump once again has shown he is a real danger to this country and unfit to lead.
Yeah, once again.
Sorry, I got a Twitter notification. Disrupted my reading. President Trump has once again shown he is a real danger to this country and unfit for the office he currently holds. If the Vice President and Cabinet do not invoke the 25th Amendment to remove him from office immediately, then my colleagues and I, you'd love to hear this date, then my colleagues and I are ready to move forward with impeaching him on Monday. As I told my colleagues here in Washington, I presided over the House the last time we impeached the President of the United States, and I'm ready to do it all over again.
Yeah.
I want to thank you all for taking the time to gather for this important event and making your voices heard.
Okay.
Keep up the good work, and I will see you all soon.
Okay.
Sincerely, Congresswoman Diana DeGette.
Okay. too much freaking junk in my car. Okay. Okay, battery. Got a battery.
This is democracy. Our government depends on all of you. I'll come to you first with a word from our Senator, Michael Bennet. Last year, I voted to remove President Trump from office for his crimes against our republic. You got it. Since then, his unconstitutional wrongdoing has only grown worse.
Right.
He should resign immediately. If he does not, Vice President Pence should evoke the 25th Amendment. And failing that, I will support any effort to impeach the president and uphold the rule of law. And here's another date, which my wife taught me. And she's here, by the way, filming it. Thank you, Heidi. Let's give it for Heidi. Including steps beyond January 20th if required. Which is important because he should never hold office again. And our next step is to ensure that our republic emerges from this crisis stronger, not weaker. We have seen where a politics of lies, dysfunction, and division has brought us. Instead, let us move forward with renewed commitment to truth, integrity, unity, and a commitment to our shared destiny as Americans. This will be difficult after the last 4 years, and especially after this past week. But we must find the way forward and come together in an exercise of self-governance that will be a model for the world. Thank you, Senator Bennett, and Godspeed on your work ahead. So it was a couple years ago, I was here with Tay. Where'd Tay go? Here he is. Can we just give it up for Tay? God bless Tay. And while we're at it, how about give it up for Katie Farnon and all the great work in Cardboard 4. So 2 years ago, some of you guys were with me, we were at the state capitol.
Yes.
It was President's Day, it was snowing, but we had people there because we had just seen this effort to have an unconstitutional, illegal border wall. The president said, hell with Congress, I'm going to write my own budget. To which we said, hell no, and we stopped him in court. Well, once again, we are witnessing a president who's shown not just a willingness, but a repeated pattern of abusing his office. And by the way, lacking decency towards others. Officer Brian Sicknick died a patriot, defending the U.S. Capitol. And today, the White House refuses to fly its flag at half-mast. That is a basic lack of decency.
It is our house.
It is our house, and we take it back on January 20th. What happened last week was the unthinkable. It was a president urging a riot, a mob, an attack on our democratic republic itself. It cannot be allowed to go unchecked. This president must be removed from office. As Stephen Colbert put it, we can't just allow this horrific action of the last week to eclipse all the other horrific actions that have taken place the last couple of years. During that time, our office has gone to court again and again to defend the rule of law in our Constitution. From that effort to build an illegal border wall, to the illegal ending of DACA, to the illegal effort to manipulate the census, to the illegal effort to undermine the Postal Service and our election, and then to the effort to undermine the election itself. We have gone to court and we have won. So let's talk about this last week for a minute. What was motivating this president? It was not concern for the public. It was his own political, petty, and personal interest. And we can't allow it to go unsaid that it was only a week ago we found out about an illegal effort to undermine and tamper with the Georgia election results. And the Georgia Secretary of State refused to give in to that pressure. And we should give credit to someone who does their job and follows the law. We should not take it for granted in this age. And let me take it closer to home, because I know we'll be talking about this today. Former Republican Speaker of our House, Russ George, condemned Lauren Boebert of his own town in Rifle, Colorado, because she's an embarrassment to Colorado. Yeah, unfortunately, she's not alone in that, but I'll save my remarks for her. Others can pick up others. So this week marked a new low from this White House. That's right. As I noted, it had been unthinkable that a president would egg on a mob to disrupt a coordinate branch of government certifying the election results. And these rioters, they desecrated the U.S. Capitol. They destroyed government property. They assaulted and killed Capitol staff. They must be held accountable. And I am leading a bipartisan coalition of state AGs to call for just that. It's not likely that we'll see the 25th Amendment used for what any reasonable observer would say is exactly what it's there for, which is when you have a president, whether physically or mentally unfit for the powers of the office, the cabinet has an obligation to act. But unfortunately, we haven't seen that sort of action. So instead, Congress will have an obligation to act to remove this president.
Chanel, hi.
And as this process goes forward, just like other processes, like the effort to overturn the Affordable Care Act, it's important that the voice of we the people be heard. And let's be clear, the president is on a lonely island right now. Only 18% of Republicans approve of what happened last week. Well, let's just say that our work as Democrats is to make sure that people know we're the party of the rule of law, of equal justice under law, and the U.S. Constitution. Because the party of Donald Trump has been the party of law breaking, of undermining the rule of law and undermining equality. And as we're inspired by the work ahead, let us be inspired by presidents like Washington and Lincoln, civil rights leaders like Martin Luther King, Cesar Chavez, and Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and legislators like John Lewis and Stacey Abrams. And speaking of Stacey Abrams, let's remark on the remarkable development this week that cannot be overshadowed. It was a 10-year journey by Stacey Abrams to see a new coalition in Georgia. A new coalition that adds to this list of leaders Reverend Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff. The sun is now shining on us like it shined on Georgia this week. We have work to do to rebuild America. As we do that work, Let us work together with a U.S. Senate that now can be a force for progress, not a brake on progress. And boy, does Minority Leader Mitch McConnell sound good to me. And when we celebrate President's Day this year, we'll have a new president and vice president. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And as we open that new chapter in history, let us be guided by the example of President Lincoln. Lincoln called on all of us to be guided by our better angels. And in his second inaugural address, he uttered powerful words that resonate today. With malice towards none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right, as God gives us to see the right. Let us strive on to finish the work we are in, to bind up our nation's wounds. We have a lot of work to do to rebuild and renew a democratic republic. By doing this work, we can realize Lincoln's vision for our democracy. And let's say it together. A government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Thank you for your engagement and your important work. I appreciate
I want to be able to thank the Attorney General's office for the bold action they took this week. And they will be opening a grand jury on the Elijah McClain death. And I hope that we can still see justice so that we are not saying Black Lives Matter in vain. We do not see any more hashtags that are just in vain. So I want to thank his office for doing that as well. Now we are going to go virtually to Representative Joe Salazar, who will be joining us virtually. Representative Salazar, it's on you.
No one can't hear you.
Give us 1 second, Joe. Representative Salazar, it's on you.
What's up, my people? How you doing? Look, I want to take some time talking about this, right? I want to talk about the history of who Donald Trump is. No, I'm not going to go back to 1492, and I'm not going back to the Jim Crow era. I'm going back to 2015, when Donald Trump started his demonization of Mexicans, of blacks, of Muslims, of indigenous people, Asians, women, homeless, non-Christians, LGBTQ, disabled, the Jewish community. This was a Nazi-level denunciation of our neighbors, of our family members, and a large number of white Americans understood his language. He told us who he was, and black, brown, indigenous America believed him. Our congressional delegation encouraged him, excused him, stayed silent, or tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. People like Ken Buck and Doug Lamborn, Scott Tipton, and Corey Gardner. And yes, we even had members of our own delegation trying to excuse his behavior, like Michael Bennett, when Michael Bennett said that he felt that Donald Trump's racism could be rehabilitated. Do you remember when congressional folks were standing out there when Donald Trump was engaging in his racism and his sexism, when he was attacking the Muslim community, and the press were asking him, asking congressional members, is Donald Trump racist?
Yes.
And congressional members said, we don't know what's in his heart, but we did. The people knew. Black people, brown people, indigenous people, people who were being terrorized by him and his administration. We knew what was in his heart because he was saying it. And when a person says it, you believe him. For years, he has fomented the rage, and he has given validity to the white nationalists, the white supremacists, the Proud Boys. Remember, stand down but stand by? They're known as the Western chauvinists, the neo-Nazis, and generally every person who needed to focus their racism, their sexism, their homophobia, and bigotry into a faux patriotism. and he was aided and abetted by Republicans and others who stayed silent. So why should we be surprised by the treasonous insurrection, the failed coup attempt on January 6th of 2021? We saw it coming. We warned of the potential of violence, of the violent acts leading up to the election, and now leading up to the inauguration. Because when this man said what he was going to do, we believed him. When he said early on that he was going to say that this election was a fraud, we believed him. And sure enough, he lived up to his own horrible standards. We can't act shocked or shaken by what we saw on Wednesday. We cannot say we were caught off guard with some of the members in Congress challenging the results, which spurred the domestic terrorists besieging our nation's capital, where they literally had Molotov cocktails and pipe bombs and other weaponry at their disposal in order to infiltrate our state, our U.S. Capitol, to go after our congressional folks. Imagine had they been successful, that they would have lined up Pelosi and Schumer and AOC and Presley and members of Congress who are progressive and lined them up for shootings, for hangings, or for some type of summary execution. Imagine what America would look like today had they been successful. And it should come as no surprise that some in law enforcement failed to do their jobs, and as a matter of fact, supported the insurrection that we saw on Wednesday. I'm going to call it like it was, like it is, that they were engaged in this failed coup attempt. And they need to be held to account just as much as the protesters need to be held to account, just as much as the congressional members need to be held to account, and just as much as the President of the United States needs to be held to account. Because this was always their plan. It is not hard to see with clarity that this failed president would engage in treasonous acts against our country. He needs to be held accountable. He needs to be held accountable either through the 25th Amendment or through impeachment and conviction in both the House and Senate respectively. He needs to never hold office again, and after he's gone, he needs to be held criminally responsible under federal and state law.
It's called Superman.
There should be no amount of white privilege that protects this man or protects his supporters.
Ain't no golf courses.
I am calling on the impeachment and the conviction of Donald J. Trump for the second time. For the second time. And also that all members who helped him out,
Yes.
the Ken Bucks of the world, the Lauren Boeberts of the world, that they be expelled from Congress.
Yes.
Complicity in this failed coup attempt. In the coming days, we're going to need to work through this impeachment, right? We're going to need to stand fast for our representatives who are fighting to impeach this president. And we also need to stay diligent, because what we saw on Wednesday, there might be repeats of that leading up to the inauguration. And one thing that black and brown people don't do very well is that we don't prepare for the very worst that white America has thrown at us. And we need to be prepared this time around. We need to make sure our communities are safe this time around. We need to protect our political leaders this time around. We cannot have any excuses at all to say that we weren't prepared because we just didn't know. These white supremacists and this president, they're telegraphing to us that this isn't over with. And let us be prepared to protect our democracy and our communities. I say it after every speech. I love you very much. I love you very much. And we will protect ourselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much to Representative Salazar. Next, we will have State Representative Leslie Harrod. And let's give it up for black women who won this election for all of us. Thank you so much, Representative Salazar. Next, we will have State Representative Leslie Harrod. And let's give it up for black women who won this election for all of us.
Thank you so much, Tay. Thank you, Joe. State Representative Leslie Harrod here. So happy to be here with you all today. I just want to give a quick shout out again to Tay for stepping up always and fighting for justice. And always speaks the truth. And yeah, that makes some folks mad. So listen, I am here today to talk about the one question that keeps perplexing some folks out there, which is, why do we always have to make this about race? Why is this about race? Come on, we all know, because we're here, the white supremacy that was on blatant display this week. We know because we stood there in the protests asking for justice for black people, proclaiming that Black Lives Matter, walking in peaceful protest as we were met with tear gas and rubber bullets. And then to see how lightly the law enforcement officers took this siege on our democracy, on our Capitol building, and to not want to equate it to race and white supremacy, to see a noose hanging outside of the Capitol building and someone with zip ties ready to hang someone, to see the first time a Confederate battle flag made it into the halls of Congress, the halls of our democracy, and to not want to equate it or talk about race. America, this is our problem. If we would have had honest conversations about race and continue to have them until our problems are better, we wouldn't be here right now. So I want to call on us to do the very difficult work of talking about race, of talking about anti-Semitism, the anti-Muslim sentiments that are going around, and to ask ourselves, what can we do better? How can we stand up with Tay when he is out there putting his life on the line every single day? What can we do to better support Black women? And how can we follow the leadership out in Washington, D.C. right now that is asking for and demanding the resignation, the impeachment of this president? Now, we also have to talk about something else, which is what Joe Salazar talked about us not doing a great job at protecting ourselves. But the truth of the matter is that law enforcement was in cahoots with what happened.
That's right, that's right.
We cannot be safe. We are not safe unless we protect each other as a community. We know that. And we will not have justice and not be able to move forward as a country until every single one of the folks who acted with Trump and with the insurgents are not only arrested, but tried as treasons and enemies of this state. They need to be down in Guantanamo or in Supermax, and they need to serve their time. This is not something to be taken lightly. This is not trespassing. And we know if that was a Black person that stormed the Capitol, what would happen. I saw how they treated Tay when we were in Washington. I saw what happened to the Black woman who drove past the barricade having a mental health crisis and was shot dead. This was an inside job. And we need all of those who were involved to be prosecuted. And then we can start to heal as a country. So, friends, I ask you to continue showing up, to show folks that the protests of this summer are not over. That what happened in Georgia is not a fluke, but a victory. And then I know if we are leading the charge, that we will win the battle for the soul of this nation, because that definitely is what it is. So join me in celebrating the inauguration of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and for the beginning of taking down white supremacy in this country once and for all. Thank you all so much for having me.
Thank you, Representative Harrod. And now we will hear from Sarah from ADAPT. So let's give our ADAPT community a warm virtual welcome. Thank you, Representative Harrod. And now we will hear from Sarah from ADAPT. So let's give our ADAPT community a warm virtual welcome.
Hello, Colorado, and everyone tuning in across the nation. The last 4 years, the disability community has been watching, listening, and actively working to ensure systems like Medicaid stay intact and that our democracy stays safe. In 2017, after weeks of threats to the Medicaid system and the Affordable Care Act, many of us took to our senators' offices and the Capitol building in DC to protest this decision and to send a clear message that we would rather go to jail than to die without Medicaid. Medicaid is our lifeline, and without it, we would end up in facilities and left for dead, like the 133,340 disabled and elderly who have already died from COVID in long-term care facilities because Trump and his administration refused to acknowledge the pandemic or mandate lockdowns or to secure PPE for individual safeties. Now, a great number of us are dead. And Trump and his backers will not acknowledge the unnecessary deaths or help us to secure vaccines in a timely manner. For more than 30 years, ADAPT has been leading force for legislation and change. We are a non-violent, disciplined, peaceful civil disobedience group. We chant, we march, we hold signs, we respect the offices of the people in order to meet with our elected officials to share conversations, to protect our liberties and our rights, our health care, our home care, and our civil rights. We do not promote violence. We do not bring weapons. We do not vandalize. We do not hurt and kill police officers. We do not support a fascist regime.
No.
And we do not support the elected officials who have stoked the hatred and violence we saw last week. Their decision-making for us and about us harms us. In DC, in 2017, our groups of non-violent, disciplined, peaceful protesters were arrested with zip ties, separated from assistive devices, violently removed from wheelchairs, carried out by the police and Capitol Police, and sent to jail. There is always a heavy police presence during ADAPT's protests, but make no comparison between how adapters are trained versus the violent attacks that took place on our Capitol. And furthermore, obviously, ADAPT was not present for Wednesday's insurrection, and attempted coup. However, we watched in dismay as white supremacists were let go without consequence, guided out by the police, let go, and told by Trump that he loved them.
Very special.
Our community has fought hard for decades to demand access to freedoms and liberties those without disabilities are freely awarded. If what happened last Wednesday in DC goes without accountability or punishment, our community is at great risk for losing our liberties and lifelines. It will get worse. We call on Congress to impeach and remove Donald J. Trump. We also call on Congress, the people who sought to overturn the election, to resign and be removed. Enough is enough. Good people still habitate this earth, and the hope is alive because we are gathered today together to call loudly for justice. Our voices and actions are our strengths, and we have the will to win this. I call on you to remember the disabled population as you rally for change today. Go in peace, dear friends. We are counting on you.
Let's make some noise for Adapt one more time, everybody. Hey, y'all can do better than that, Colorado. I'm gonna claim that this hybrid version of a rally was a success. We got 2 more speakers, and then we're on the road, y'all. We're gonna get on the road after 2 more speakers. I'd love to welcome in person Wendy from Working Families Party.
Hey y'all, it's good to see you all today.
Yes.
My name's Wendy Howell. I'm the state director of the Colorado Working Families Party. We are also the anchor of the Democracy Defense Coalition here in the great state of Colorado. And we have been working overtime after the election to protect our democracy. And we have seen unprecedented assaults on our democracy, not just this week, but leading up to it. Because let us all be clear. There were things that led up to Wednesday.
Yes.
There were lots of things that led up to Wednesday. Not least of all is the President of the United States refusing to accept a peaceful transfer of power.
That's right.
We have seen all this week leading up to it, traitors wrap themselves in the flag and say this is 1776 in an attempt to overturn peaceful election results in America. That is sedition.
Yes.
That is not, those are not patriots.
No.
Those are people who are seeking to undermine and overturn democracy in America for the cult of personality of one man. And there is a word for that, and it is not democracy, and it is not patriotism.
No.
John Adams is one of my favorite figures in history, and he was our second president, and he was our first one-term president. And he did something, probably the most remarkable thing he did in his presidency, is that when he was defeated for re-election, he committed to a peaceful transfer of power. And as Cory Booker pointed out on the floor of the Senate this week, that was unprecedented. People in Europe, did not believe that. They didn't believe the news when they heard it, that someone had willingly given up power when they were the executive of a country. That is the American legacy of 1776. That is patriotism. We also famously saw, there was a woman actually, Elizabeth Powell, I believe was her name, who asked Ben Franklin on his way out of the Constitutional Convention, "What form of government do we have?" And he famously replied, "A republic, if we can keep it." All of you here today are fighting to keep it, and I thank you for that. And to those who say that they are patriots for attempting to attack and undermine democracy, I have words for you, and they are simple. You will see true patriots rise up against you. We also see in this country, and we know, that we have a long, long history of white supremacy and white nationalism. And we see that in play this week, because in truth, it was white supremacists and white nationalists who rose up. They were offended that black people and brown people had votes. They attempted to draw this line between legal votes and illegal votes. And guess who the illegal votes were? And we see that they have spread these lies, including 2 of our own Congress members, Obert and Lamborn, to the point that they were willing to sign on and vote for an effort to overturn the will of the people in this election. You, sir, and you, madam, are not patriots, and you must leave office. It is just that simple. No one who supports sedition should represent the United States of America in Congress or in the presidency. You stand with democracy or you do not stand with America. It is that simple. Thank you very much, and I'm going to turn the mic back over.
Let's give it up for Working Families Party. As we talk about black women consistently saving our asses from the presidential election, that was black women who did that. The runoffs in Georgia, that was black women who did that. And another black woman that's been leading the fight here in Colorado on the Regional Transportation Board is the director, Chantel Lewis. Somebody who has consistently shown up when her colleagues have turned their back on her. She never gave up on her constituents. She always said, I'm here for my people because they sent me to this seat to represent their voices. And so I think it's fitting that our last speaker before we head out is by a black woman who's been doing the work here in Colorado, but who has been fighting for each and every one of us, whether you use RTD or not. She has been your voice, and next year, when they have the Black Women's March, each and every one of you should be out there and making sure you support black women when they get in the streets, and they say support us, when they get out and say donate to these causes. So I need y'all to give a warm Colorado welcome to my sister, my friend, Emmanuel Thunderbolt, Director Chantel Lewis.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you all so much for being here. My name is Chantel Lewis. I serve on the board for the Regional Transportation District. That is RTD, our buses, and our trains. It's been a while since I've spoken outside of Zoom, so give me a moment to adjust myself. Thank you. Accountability and justice. That is the answer. In fact, that is the only answer. Accountability and justice. We speak so often about protecting our democracy. Our democracy is our people. Let us not forget about that. Protection of our democracy means the protection of our people. Right. We've heard quite a bit that the actions displayed were un-American and not patriotic. I would ask that we take a moment and be honest with ourselves. Not only were those actions American, I would argue it is indeed patriotic. We may not like that truth when it is laid bare, but it is indeed our truth. What we witnessed was such a raw and honest display of what we are as a country. Do not look away from that. We have long ignored the dangers of not only Trump, but his ideologies. We have ignored the lies he has spread. We have ignored the lies that he has continued to put a target on the backs of Black, brown, indigenous, people that are poor, folks that are experiencing homelessness, folks with disabilities. We have ignored that. Unfairly, I might ask. Perpetually targeted by white supremacy and coddled by the inability of our leaders to name those dangers and do something about it. That's right. It is irresponsible to call for unity without first seeking justice and accountability. We must hold those that mean harm to be held accountable to that harm. America has long ignored the behaviors of these patriots. We have denied their behaviors, not just on Wednesday, but for decades, and most blatantly with the election of Donald Trump himself. What we have seen is that instead of holding those patriots accountable and seeking justice, we have instead seen attacks on those calling out the hypocrisy of the treatment of those during our summer protests, including Kay and I, those who have gone to Ferguson, those who are protecting water, that treatment. And we've called out that hypocrisy, and that over the summer, those protests were to protect the lives from the violent, sanctioned actions of the police. And those were perpetrators. That's what they called us, not peaceful protesters. We have seen in the media a reversal of the roles of victim and offender, painting those that meant to cause harm and did as victims. And over the summer, painted those peaceful protesters as perpetrators. How long will we deny this? How long will we pretend that this isn't America? If we are truly about protecting our democracy, we can show that in action today, not just in word. If we are truly about protecting our people, then we must seek accountability and justice. You know how we do that? Arrest those that have caused harm. Hold them accountable. And hold their leader accountable. Arrest Trump. Impeach Trump. It is not enough to take away his social media accounts. Those are easy. Do what is hard and do what matters. Do what protects our people to protect our democracy. Impeach Donald Trump
now. The time is now. We cannot wait. We have gotten it wrong for so long. And now is the time to get it right.
Yes. Right.
Our lives are on the line.
Yes.
Yours, mine, all of us. The time is now. Impeach Donald Trump. And if you've ever heard me speak, you will know what I'm about to say next. It is not for us. It is not enough for us to gain momentum when something large happens. Right. We have to build our racial justice muscle. And I'm going to tell you what that looks like. That looks like you not ignoring when you see racism happening in your workplace. That looks like you sticking up for your neighbors when they are being unfairly targeted. They did it recently with your HOAs. That looks like you creating policy and holding your policy makers accountable, not just during election, but throughout their entire term. This movement will be sustained by each of you, but not when something large happens. When something large happens, it is too late, y'all. Yeah. We have too much at stake. We have too much to lose. And you all are so important to me. And I hope important to you all that I am. That you can commit. Thank you. That you all commit to doing something differently today. Call out in your hiring practices if you see implicit bias, right? Call out when you are seeing racism happen. Call out when you are seeing those who are being discriminated against because they have a disability. As subtle as it might be. Don't let that shit ride. Because you know what it does? Wins. That's what it does. Those incremental acts of violence eventually lead up to what we have seen at the United States Capitol. That's right. And I'll end with that. And impeach Donald Trump.
Let's give it up again for Chantel Lewis, Director Lewis. We are here today to show not only does Colorado reject xenophobia, racism, homophobia, transphobia, but we are here today in one voice to say that this is our democracy if we can keep it, and we must hold everybody, Democrat, Republican, Independent, Green Party, we must hold everybody accountable. So how many of you guys are ready to ride? Real quick,
Beep, beep.